Well, the momentum continues to roll, Brent. Tennessee adds Colby Smith, offensive lineman out of the state of North Carolina, 6'7", 295, long, athletic, and plays with a mean disposition.
Well, and tackle body. I think that's the biggest thing you're looking for when you talk about offensive line. We talk about it in the secondary. You look for corners, guys who play corner in high school. Maybe they don't play corner at the next level, but that's where you start in recruiting. Offensive line, you start with a tackle body. If they have to go inside, they go inside. But you want a guy who can play tackle. The other thing, too, is you got another guy in North Carolina, Jay Graham, doing work. We've talked about that state. We've talked about Tennessee trying to get involved there. And 3 weeks ago, it was all about Mack Brown in North Carolina. And here's Tennessee and Jay Graham just plugging away in North Carolina. I think this is a big get for Tennessee, not because he's an immediate impact guy, Austin. I like his frame. I like what you have to work with. And I like the fact that he's coming into a situation where he can be a developmental guy, which is what you want out of your offensive lineman.
100% agree. I mean, when you look at tackles, you don't want them to have to come in and play right away. Tennessee's fortunate enough to have three capable bodies that have played some football here that would be back, when Colby Smith gets here in the fall of 2021, that, of course, being Wanye Morris, Darnell Wright, and Kayron Calvert. The thing about Colby that, I think that, can't be said enough is, he's got almost 35-inch arms. I mean, he's got long arms, has really good feet. And I know the Tennessee staff feels like they kind of got ahead of this one. And, had there been summer camps, had, there been spring evaluation periods, I think Colby Smith probably is, one, higher rated, and then two, probably has a lot more interest from around the Southeast.
I don't think there's any question, Austin. I think you make a great point with the fact that some of these guys would benefit greatly from summer camps and spring evaluations. I think he's one of them because his body's so vastly different than it's been the last 12, 14 months. A year ago, a little over a year ago, you could probably see it, but it's hard to project a guy at 200 pounds, a year and a half ago, hey, he's going to go 320. Remember, we saw this with Marcus Tatum. His body didn't really go that way when he got to Tennessee. This is already happening, which I think is very important. I'm with you 100%. I think his stock will climb. I think it would have climbed quickly with spring evaluations in place. The other thing, too, is, in the interview with his coach that you did, he just talked about how nimble he is and how good he is with his feet. And look, long arms are great. I'm with you on that 100%. Can you move your feet at that position? His coach clearly believes he's got very nimble feet for his size. Almost feels like a guy who was a point guard in basketball who grew a bunch of inches. He can still handle the ball as a power forward. That's kind of what this feels like. Here's a guy who moves really well, and now all of a sudden his body's filled out into a college-level type player, but he's continued to keep his athleticism.
Where does Tennessee go from here on the offensive line? Tennessee, in my opinion, Brent, wants to add at least one more tackle, probably three more bodies. I think, when you look around, this state, Dietrich Pennington, Griffin kid out of the mid-state, William Griffin, and then out of state, Tennessee's going to continue to swing it. Amarius Mims, the big offensive tackle from the state of Georgia that has ties to several guys that have recently committed. So they're going to continue to lean on him. You see that on Twitter all the time. And then another fellow North Carolina product, Diego Pounds.
Yeah, Pounds, I think, is an interesting – look, Mims is the guy everybody covets because he's this year's Darnell. He's this year's Wanye Morris in terms of a guy who's physically could come in and play early if you need him to. I think Pounds is an interesting prospect, further along from a size development standpoint probably than Smith is. But, again, another guy who I think you can look at and project and say, hey, a year from now, this guy's got a chance to be a really good player. Not necessarily the impact type guy that a lot of people are projecting Mims to be. The other thing too is, does a guard, somewhere around the way want to jump in? I'm with you. They got to have another tackle body, and then I think you make the two guys in state your priorities. Pennington may be a guard when it's all said and done, plays tackle now. I think Griffin, I think we both agree, probably is an inside guy. But what we know about Jeremy Pruitt, wants big bodies and is going to always recruit the offensive line. He's still a little bit scarred by the fact that he went through that spring practice with 3 walk-ons, and it's not going to have that happen again to him on the offensive line, which is why you're not going to see years where Tennessee takes 1 or 2 or zero, as one former coach did. They're going to always take, I think, 3 to 5 offensive linemen in every class, don't you? I mean, that's sort of what it feels like when you talk about, hey, here's our 25 every year. They're going to earmark 3 to 5 of those for offensive line. It certainly appears.
Well, there was just a few years ago when Butch Jones was the head coach. They had, all these problems on the offensive line really started under Derek Dooley, who's the coach you referenced that didn't take any in one particular cycle. But Butch had about 13 or 14 offensive linemen. I remember then offensive line coach Walt Wells clamoring and pleading with people in the building that they needed, 16 to 17 at least. I think Jeremy Pruitt's along the same line, 16, 17, 18 offensive linemen on your roster, because, you can never have too many big bodies, and quality big men are hard to come by. So, Tennessee continues to swing along the offensive line. They'll continue to do so. Will the recruiting momentum continue? Only time will tell. But there are some announcements set up this weekend that could head Tennessee's way. For Brent Hubbs, I'm Austin Price.